This was on the opposite way. Let me turn that. There we go.
Oh no, everyone saw your behind the scenes setup. I always wonder if people would judge my behind the scenes setup, because I'm like on a couch in an office filled with a bunch of junk.
Yeah, yours was very good. Mine is like not as prepared. I'm like, I have like, coats over there, and it's all good. It's reality, right?
Absolutely. And is your babe here with us today, or
She's out of the office.
out
She's
of the
downstairs
office?
with my dad. So
Amazing. And my son is with his dad
okay,
at
nice.
his grandparents' house. So we have like a
Perfect.
little bit of window of time. So, well, I want to thank, first of all, everybody for joining this live. This series is called I Thought It Was Just Me. And it really was born out of the desire for us to be able to connect about things that are lived experience, mental health related, that we go through these experiences feeling like we're completely alone. And we suffer in a very lonely place. And the more people I talk to in my life, because, I'm a grief counselor, my background is in counseling and working with people on such deep things, I really desire to learn people's lived experiences. And the more people I talk to, the more I saw myself inside of their stories. And so this series is really focusing on kind of breaking open that box of things that people might feel very lonely about in their experience and stigmatized. So today, for our very first launch of this series, we are going to dive into mental health before, during, and after pregnancy. And I'm so excited to introduce Ivy Watts to our chat today. Ivy, thank you so much for being a part of this question mark series that we couldn't really say what it was or how it was.
Yeah, no, I'm
so
super excited to be here. I love the theme. I thought it was just me, and yeah, excited to be here and have this conversation around everything mental health related to parenthood and pregnancy and everything.
Yes. And I was just messaging you earlier because I'm on TikTok all the time. Anytime I have a free moment, right? And there is the funniest stuff going around about motherhood, childbirth. And so right now, today, we have a viral video about people finding out that epidurals are not just like an injection of like a chemical, but it's like something completely different and very graphic, and we're not going to get into it. But I'm just so struck repeatedly about how little information we really have, like while we're pregnant, giving birth.
Yeah, no, I agree. I am not on TikTok. So that was, news to me. But also I didn't get an epidural, and I hadn't learned what I assumed the same thing until you actually sent me this, right? So, even myself who's gone through labor, like I didn't even know what to expect. And no, right, it's a shame that we don't have that information. It's like they give you all this information about, just your baby, and like there's things to expect in that sense. But I feel like around the labor part, a lot of times there's so many question marks, and you don't know the right questions to even ask your OB or your midwife to even be prepared for that.
Right. And I did have an epidural. It wasn't my plan, because I think many brand new people giving birth, I'm like, mind over matter, no big deal. I'm gonna it's just a moment in time. I can get through anything. And as it's happening, I immediately know, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. This is a different kind of pain. I had no idea that an epidural was that, and I didn't care at the moment. I was just
That's true. That's true. I feel like probably most people don't care. They just want the pain to be over.
Yeah, you can put up with anything to alleviate what is happening.
Exactly.
And I'm happy about it. And I think, one thing to just lay out on the table is that people give birth in very different ways. Everybody's experience is so unique. You shared that you had more of a natural birth with no drugs. I'm like, kudos to you. There are women who have to go through C-sections or choose to have a C-section, and there are ones who are like, give me all the drugs, and that was me. So, just normalizing that we all have a different journey to go on.
Right. No, I I agree. I mean, it's not like I walk around, you know, with this crown on, like, oh, I didn't use any medication, right? And it's like nobody, it's like nobody really talks about that in like the day-to-day conversation. It's right, like birth is going to look different for every person. And I think, you know, recognizing that your body has just done something powerful, no matter how you have given birth, I think is the most important thing to walk away from, whether you had all the medication or a C-section or you did it, like you birthed a human, and that's, you grew a human, you birthed a human, and now the journey is really just beginning. But you know, you've done this incredible thing, and I feel like that's really what's, you know, the most important thing.
Yeah, it's
It
a
is.
straight up miracle how are created. Like I still think about it and I'm just like, I don't totally get
I know.
it, but
I
it's
know. I
amazing.
agree.
It's a miracle. My son will be like, how did you grow me? And I'm like, bro, I don't
Water,
know.
water
Like,
and
I'm
cookies.
doing my best. Exactly. Exactly. Well, so I definitely want to dive in a little bit to kind of a little bit about your experience, and what were some of the things that really rose to the surface for you as far as like your experience with pregnancy before,
Yeah,
during, and
definitely.
after.
So in pregnancy, I was fortunate to have a doula who was one of my really great friends. So she did walk me through a decent amount about labor. So I felt pretty empowered and ready for like the labor process. Obviously, I didn't know what it was going to feel like. I'd never done it before, but I felt empowered to do it and to give birth. My pregnancy experience was pretty okay, considering what some of my friends were going through. I didn't experience too much of the physical part of it all. I think the mental part of it all, I had just lost my mom a week before I found out I was pregnant, or a week after I found out I was pregnant. And so that was really hard for me with my mental health. And it was like this strange time of managing grief and joy at the same time, and how to balance the two and be okay with balancing the two of those. So that was hard during my pregnancy, and also, you know, the anxiety that goes into, well, I'm not supposed to be stressed during my pregnancy because that can affect my baby, and all I feel right now is stress and sadness and anger. So that was really, you know, challenging to work through. But after giving birth, I felt like I was really prepared for the birth process itself, but I wasn't prepared for postpartum. I didn't know anything about what physically was going to happen to my body. And so that was all a huge surprise. I was breastfeeding, and that was so challenging and so frustrating. And I just remember just sobbing in the hospital. You have all these hormones that have just like released from your body after giving a birth, and all these hormones, and I was just so emotional, and I just felt like nobody understood what I was going through. And my husband was great, but it just felt like I was like on a different planet from him and what my experiences were. Um, and so that was really challenging to take care of this new little baby that you have no idea what you're doing. And then to be dealing with all of these physical changes and pains and the hormones and the mental health challenges, and then the grief on top of that for me as well. Um, so that was really hard in the beginning. And my daughter had acid reflux pretty badly in the beginning. So she would just cry all of the time. And I just remember the biggest advice that I got from everybody was just enjoy every moment. And I wasn't enjoying any moments because she was like, no matter what I did, she was just like screaming. And that was really hard for me to work through, and thinking that there was something wrong with me and what I was doing. And so I just remember one day I just like handed her to my husband. I knew she was in a safe spot, and just left. I didn't say anything. I just went to my car, and I really debated like just driving to Colorado or something and never coming back, because I wanted to be a mom, but I did not want that. Like I did not want the 24/7 screaming. And I think it just made me feel so bad, because all you see on social media and all people were telling me was to enjoy all the things, and I wasn't. And so it just made me feel like I was a bad mom. So I wish I was just more prepared for what was going to come after birth. I felt so prepared to give birth, but then afterwards it's like this huge shock to the system that just wasn't talked to me or communicated to me in any way.
Yeah, and that really, I think, echoes this idea of like enjoy every moment. You're
Right.
gonna fall in love
Right.
with your baby immediately. And yeah, like sure, I love him, but
Right.
dang, I'm
Right.
tired, I'm scared, and you're just gonna let me take this human home? Like I'm not totally sure like I'm prepared for that. And like what if I mess up? And what resources are there for me? And
Right.
it was so scary. So yes, absolutely. And do you feel like, feel free to answer or not, but like you losing your mom impacted that time like immediately after giving birth? Because my, belief for many women who have
Mm-hmm.
relationships with their mother, they really rely on that person to help kind of
Yes.
companion.
Yeah, even still to this day, right? I mean, it's only been a year. My daughter just turned 1 this week, which is crazy. But yeah, I mean, I would have loved to ask my mom all the different things about advice around motherhood and what she would have done in this scenario and what her experiences were like. I just never really thought to ask those things before. And then once I got pregnant, she was only here for another week. So I wish I just was able to ask more of those questions. So it definitely impacted my mindset around everything and just added another layer of challenge to it. Yeah.
Right. Like you think about these big life experiences, and I think our assumption is
Right.
they kind of
Right.
happen in a vacuum. Like you give birth and you're a parent now, and here we are. But there's so many other things going on in your life, in your mental health, in your
Right.
world,
Right.
in the world in general, that you can't just
Hmm.
be a loving
Right.
parent.
Exactly. There's so many other things going on that impacts that, and I think that's just where it gets hard because people just expect you to show up and to be this great parent, and that's what you see on social media of other people doing, and so it just makes it more difficult.
Yes. I think that comparison for, you know, being a parent today, I feel like has to be different than being a parent in like the 80s, 90s, whatever, before social media existed,
Right.
where we could like peep into other people's homes while they're being this like amazing parent, like,
Right.
doing all things
Right.
right.
No, yeah, exactly. I know if I didn't know what was going on, I'm sure I would feel like I was doing a much better job. Like if I didn't know that my friend was, enrolling their child in a daycare that they were learning Spanish at 6 months old, then I wouldn't feel bad that my daughter only has me speaking English to her every day. You know what I mean? Like I mean, even those are big examples, but like even things like that, it's just so easy to jump on social media and just see moms doing so many different things and just assuming that you're not doing enough for your child and that because of that you aren't enough and then just feeling like a bad mom, which is not the case, but it's just so easy to spiral into that when you're on social media.
Yeah, I think mom guilt
Yeah.
existed far before social media, but it's the
Right.
volume
Right.
is just turned
Right.
up
Exactly.
right now.
Exactly. Yeah. So many things to just see on social media. I mean, I was even thinking about how there's some influencers that I follow who are moms and they have like 6 kids, but yet they're still on social media doing all the things, posting all the reels and doing all the, chat boxes or questions and things like that and answering questions all the time and just seeming so active and engaged. And I'm like, how do you like keep your house clean and make dinner for your 6 children and like do all these things on social media and still look like you're doing just fine? And it's really you don't know what someone is
Mhm.
going through, behind the screen, but it's just very easy to get wrapped up in well, this person has 4 more kids than I do and they're doing so much more than me. Again, like something must be wrong with me.
Right. Right. And I don't personally know anyone with 5 children. And so I wouldn't have
Right.
anyone to compare myself to if not for
Hmm.
watching them on social media. And I know the social media accounts that are like kind of showcasing like real motherhood,
Right.
like the behind the scenes messy house. The messy house is still really nice. Like, wait, is that what it's supposed
I
to look
know.
like? Is that what a
Right.
mess is supposed to
Right,
look
right.
like?
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so funny, right? You're like, oh my gosh, well, my mess is so much messier.
Right. Like, how do you have a white couch? What are you doing? Where does your
Exactly,
child go?
exactly. Oh my goodness, that's too funny. Yeah, no, but I think social media can be good and bad. There's lots of great information out there, but it's also can be all encompassing and making you just feel bad about yourself.
Totally. And I think there's like so much to be said for what social media can do in the early days
Hmm.
after giving birth to a baby. Like I was worried about feeding because my son,
Hmm.
we tried breastfeeding. It was traumatic. It was awful for both of us. He ended
Yeah.
up losing weight, getting jaundice. Like it was horrifying. And the feeling of not being able to feed your baby is a depth of pain I
I
don't know that
know.
I've experienced before. Like a panic of like, why can't my body do what it is
Right.
like literally built to do? And it has a lot of mental health components and different, things that really contributed to, I think, my mental block. But genuinely, my body just wasn't
Hmm.
doing what it needed to do. But I followed pages that helped me understand like different options for like getting your baby fed because at
It
the end
is.
of the day, fed is best. Like, how are you going to get that little human? And that helped me feel less like
Hmm.
I failed. The day I to my husband doing
Hmm.
tummy time or skin to skin in the window.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do for jaundice um, with my son. And I'm just like bawling. And I'm like, I don't want to
Right.
do this anymore. And it was just like a freeing experience as well. But I think I really gained some more understanding of like, okay, if I'm not going to do this, what is my plan moving forward? And I followed so many accounts that helped me understand like what the different options were so that I could at least kind of go into this prepared for what the
Yeah,
different
no, and
options were.
I think that's so important, right? I think there's just so much pressure to breastfeed, and knowing that there's so many different barriers that exist, that it doesn't work out, right? Like you said, your body just wasn't functioning. It was traumatic for your son as well, and so right, it's being able to work through that process, and being able to acknowledge that your body isn't broken, and that it just, this was just the best thing for your son, and that there were social media accounts to be able to help you to see that, and to help you through that, and that transition, and that it's okay. I think a lot of times, depending on where you birth, the hospital can also put a lot of pressure on you to do that. So
I They wouldn't let me leave until he fed. And I was like, can I get some formula? And then they sent in a different nurse to
oh
like
no.
shame me and be like, it's not a good idea. And given that that wasn't your plan, like maybe we could like bring in a specialist or whatever. But it was just like, I asked you for
Yeah,
food for my baby. Like, so angry and scared. Like, what if I could never do it?
I know,
Would they let me
right?
go? It was, yeah, it was I'm trying to think of like what the type of hospital. It was like a family first hospital or something like that, where I live, where I was told after that happened to me that like, yeah, that's pretty typical. And I was like, can you tell me
Yeah.
before?
That's
Like, give me
That's
that information
awful,
before.
especially because of all the things we've already talked about, with all the hormones and emotions that you're feeling, to be shamed by a nurse that you're putting your trust in for yourself and your baby. I mean, you might not feel comfortable to share other things that are going on with you or with your baby, and then that could lead to a whole cascade of health issues. So I think that's awful. I'm so sorry you experienced that, to have that shame instead of just being like, here, would you like us to continue to try to support you in breastfeeding? No, you're over it? Okay, let's get the formula. Like, like instead of shaming you.
I, yeah, and I think I would have felt better. And my son wouldn't
Mhm.
have lost the weight that he did. I mean, the days following his birth were so scary. We had to go to the doctor's offices and take his blood and stuff. It was awful. Like, not
No,
the first few days that you
not
want
at
to
all.
have,
Not at
you
all.
know?
That is awful. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think, just going back, like you were saying, for the during pregnancy, your friends were going through, hard things, and like that wasn't something you experienced, but it definitely rang
Mhm.
true for me. I shared little bit about my pregnancy journey with you during our call, but like I am somebody who has always really struggled with eyes
Mm-hmm.
on my body and focus body. Like I already have enough body image issues. And I thought when I got pregnant, I was like, oh, nice. So now I can like eat and get a belly and it'll be like cool. Like it'll be so in belly. But what I didn't realize was how many eyes turn toward my ever changing body without a relationship to support those eyeballs. Like I worked in a place with like medical professionals, and for them, they're excited from like a medical perspective, from whatever perspective that made them feel like, oh, I can touch this person I've never touched before, or I can ask her some like really personal questions, when we don't have that relationship. And it was really hard to continue to showcase my changing body and have constant comments being made about my body. And it freaked me out. I felt really unsafe in my work environment. And when I told, people that were in charge, like, hey, this is happening to me and I feel really uncomfortable, I was told, like, oh, Kaylee, they're just happy for you. And I was like, no, like, I think I'm being like low-key harassed. Like people, I was in a meeting once and I'm like, how's pregnancy going, Kaylee? And I'm like, I'm just really having a hard time with everyone touching me. And that was a really vulnerable thing for me to say. And then one of the people there like chased me around the office that day. I was like, this is like, frankly, for like my mental health, I was just like not well when I was in my office, I was not well. And I could not get onto maternity leave fast enough. Like it was hard. So I think like even that during pregnancy can have an impact on your mental health, especially if you struggle with like any body stuff, because your body is changing like quite literally against your will in ways that you don't even like know that they're going to be changing.
Oh my goodness. I can't believe that this coworker chased you around the office after you said like, hey, don't touch me. Like
it was weird. And like looking back, I can say like, of course they were excited for me, but I'm also like a person like who like, you've never touched me in your life. Why are you touching me today? And the idea that like your body isn't your body anymore, it is but a vessel for something way more important than you, was really hard. Like that was another hard thing. And that continued even after giving birth, in the hospital. And that was a terrible experience. But then at home and trying to breastfeed, but even after breastfeeding was done, my body was his. He was grabbing at me and always wanted me to hold him. And, I felt I couldn't leave to go do any kind of like showering, sleeping, eating like things that I normally would. Like my body was his. And that was a very difficult space for me to live inside for, I can't even like gauge when.
And how old is your son now?
He's 3.5.
Wow.
So it definitely, he's still pretty grabby because he's a toddler. But I think, what you said you did, like you got in your car and you were like, gotta figure out if I'm gonna come back today. That felt very poignant in my story as well. But I think it took me longer to do it because that guilt, that mom guilt of like, if you are not there, and obviously I trust my husband, I trust everyone who was around my child, but they're not me.
Exactly. Especially when you have this unique and beautiful connection with your son that cannot be matched with anybody else, right? It does feel like, in a way, it has to be me that's doing it. I can't leave. I can't, and I think I struggle with that in the sense of like, it's with my relationships and just being like, I feel like I always have to be the one, like my mom brain can't turn off, right? So I feel like that leads into that too for me. It's like I can't just drive to Colorado because it's just not gonna happen. Like there's just I mean, I guess hypothetically it could, right? Like you said, like there's people in my life that I trust and with her, but it just adds some anxiety for me of if I was to, go to a weekend trip. Like I haven't even been able to do that yet because of my own anxiety around that. What does that mean for my daughter? What does that mean for me, and how am I going to handle that? Right? So yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying around the body image stuff, though, it's so huge. I remember too, like when I was pregnant, I've always struggled with my body. I was a track athlete, and just there was so much pressure around how we looked, and so that has carried in with me through my adult life. And yeah, becoming pregnant, I think I felt the same way. Like, oh, I'm excited for the first time to not care as much about my body. And I think later on, when I was so big, like about to pop, I didn't care as much because I knew what was about to happen. But I think in the beginning stages of my body changing, it was so strange for me, and it did almost feel like I was in a different body. And I think it took me a while to be able to accept that. But I think even more so for me after giving birth, being able to learn to accept my body and knowing that I'm not going to look the same as I did pre-pregnancy, and that that's okay. And I think, interestingly enough, I've been able to accept my body more now after giving birth than I ever have before, which I'm really grateful for, like that growth. But yeah, it's taken a while, right? Of like looking in the mirror and being upset with what you see because you just birthed a human. It's not going to look the same.
Right. 100%. And you're saying that you were able to kind of accept your body more now than ever. Like, what do you think is the difference
Yeah, I
for you?
think for me, I've been trying to think about the example that I want to set for my daughter. And I just know, like, even though my parents are great, I know there was comments that were made that definitely impacted the way that I viewed myself from a young girl. And, even just thinking about the way that my mom viewed her body, it plays an impact on, okay, if she's, very kind of obsessed over the way she looks, then that means that I should be doing the same thing. So I've been trying to really think about the way that I'm modeling the reasons why I'm working out. Am I working out as a punishment, or am I working out because it makes me feel good, it makes me feel strong and confident? So that's kind of how I've been trying to frame it of, I have little amount of time, and I'm going to just use this time because it makes me feel good. It feels like a good break. And just kind of challenge myself in that space. So I think I'm kind of seeing it as a self-care break in that sense, but then also, trying to reframe my own mindset so that I can prevent some of that for my daughter, and that she doesn't have to feel like her body isn't good enough, or that she has to, change the way that she's eating or work out incredibly hard to fit into this mold that she sees on social media when she's older, or whatever exists when she's a teenager. I don't want that for her.
Yeah, absolutely. And that totally resonates with me as well. I think like it's a really practice what you preach kind of thing. Like if we want to raise children who are not, you know, putting their value on the way that they look, who are they learning that from? Who did I learn it from? Who did you learn it from? Important adults in our lives teach us how to do this thing. And, all we can do, I think, is a little bit better than
Yeah.
what our parents did.
Yep, exactly. And that's really the goal, right? Every generation to come. So
Yes, 100%. 100%. And there's so many, I think that pressure too can take a toll on like mental health. And that, when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, I'm having a girl, obviously. How could I be a boy mom and like don't do a boy mom for me? Like that's not what I'm saying. But how is it possible that I'm having a boy? And when I found out I was like I didn't know how to do that because I had built in my head, like just like you were saying, like I'm gonna build like kind of a sassy, outspoken little girl who just thinks like she's the coolest person in the whole world. Like I want her to stand out and stand up in every situation. And I knew what I wanted to build. And when I found out I was having a boy, I was really confronted with, okay, what does a boy being born into this world like what are the characteristics that I want to pull forward in
Mm-hmm.
him and I really want to cultivate. And I think the idea of creating like a
Yeah.
little feminist, kind, empathetic, loving person who also accepts
Yeah.
his body for what it is and, you know, eats because he's
Right.
hungry and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Like I think when we like gender things like that, it gets a little complicated because the things I wanted in a
Mhm.
little girl, I
Right.
also want in a little boy. A couple
Yeah.
other layers to it, you know, that I always want to consider in how to build like a
Yeah.
really cool human for this
I
world.
love that reframing of it all, right? Because, you know, it's all things that matter for boys as well. And so I think that that's huge, and just kudos to you for being a good mom for raising that kind of kid.
Well, you know, I saw this Instagram post that was like, someday I'm going to be so glad that my child
Oh
is
yeah, I saw that.
outspoken and has leadership skills. Today is not that day.
It
Like,
is.
it's a lot, but it's I would overarchingly rather create someone who
Yeah.
questions me than doesn't question
Yeah. No, so
anybody,
it's such a
you
good
know?
point, right? I'm not at that point yet, so I'll report back. So far her words are very limited, so she's not. Oh my goodness, too funny.
Well, you know, another thing we kind of had in common or wanted to talk about during this series was this idea of
Mhm.
just you wait and see kind of thing, like constant, like, for example, when I was pregnant, I was in my
I
work
know.
bathroom. Let's all go back to the trauma from the work while I was pregnant. In my work bathroom, washing my hands. This woman comes up to me and she says, "How are you feeling?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm
Mhm.
so tired." And she's like, "Oh, just you wait till he's born." And I'm like, "Okay, but
Right,
am I allowed to be
right,
tired right
right.
now?"
I know. I heard that so much. And like people would say like, "Oh, you better, stock up on your sleep now," as if that's something that you can do. Like I'm like I can't like, put into my sleep bucket and hope that like and pull from it when she's not sleeping, in newborn days. But no, I know. It's so frustrating. I think the just you wait phenomenon of what people are telling you, I think it just creates so much fear for folks when I think everyone's experience is going to be different. Like I have friends whose baby, since like 2 weeks old, they have slept through the night. So that just you wait for no
Mhm.
sleep didn't necessarily apply to her, but she could have felt so much fear that then impacted her mental health during her pregnancy that could have impacted so many other things, the way that she went into labor and delivery, the way that she, was able to bond with her baby in the beginning because of that fear. So I think that there's so much of the just you wait until the terrible twos, or what is it, I forget what they're calling the threes now. It's like the three.
Rename her, which I don't say.
Right. Like there's just so much like just you wait for that. But I also think I'm not there yet, but like somebody could have loved the terrible twos over the newborn stage. Like I wasn't particularly fond of the newborn stage because my daughter had really bad acid reflux and she was crying 24/7. So like me, I personally like I love this stage with a 1 year old versus the 3 months in the beginning. Like I don't want to do that again. So like the just you wait, I feel like is so hard. It just creates fear when everyone's experience is different because every baby, every kid is so different and so unique.
Mhm.
And it just takes away from that for the person.
Yeah. And it also feels a bit disenfranchising of your experience in this moment today. Like you're asking me how I'm doing. I'm telling you and you're saying, "Well, it gets worse." And that's like saying there are starving
Hmm.
kids, so
Hmm.
you better eat now. And it's okay, but I'm not
Right.
hungry right now.
Right.
Like I, I'm reaching out, I'm telling you how I'm doing, and you're telling me like
Hmm.
that's nothing. And that was really the message that I felt of how you're doing
Right.
right now is
Right.
nothing.
Yeah. No, I hear that 100%. Right. It just feels like what you're going through right now isn't important, and you're going to experience it 1,000 times worse. So like talk to me then. And when you talk to me then, I'm sure I'll tell you something else. Oh, just wait for that. It's going to be even worse then. It's like, well, can
Yes.
I just feel how I'm feeling right now, or can I just enjoy the now or feel the sad right now? I experienced that during the newborn days when I reached out to a couple of friends about just how overwhelmed and just frustrated I was with Charlotte and her not sleeping. I mean, sorry, with her not, she wasn't sleeping because of the acid reflux, but with her
Right.
just crying all the time. And one of my friends was like, well, that's just what babies do, right? And I'm like, yes, but also like, can we acknowledge that this is really impacting me in a negative way? And going into all the things I said about feeling the mom guilt because I wasn't enjoying, it's just, it was hard to hear. Well, that's what babies do, right? Like they cry. I'm like, yeah, they do, but so it's just along the lines of like discrediting how someone's feeling and just being able to sit with them in that moment and say like, yeah, that's really tough. I think that can go a long way.
100%. I mean, that's with any time you're trying to support somebody through an experience, and that really rings
Right.
true in like grief. Like when you say like I'm really struggling, I'm feeling really sad, this person has died, and someone says like,
Right.
well, at least they're in a better place, or at least they're not hurting anymore, and those kind of things. And it's like, okay, but can I feel sad? Like, am I like, can
Right.
I do this right now
Right.
also? Like, can two be true at once? Like, that's kind of the thing is, can I be struggling today and need support today
Right.
and like call you when that
Right,
other thing
right.
you're worrying about
Exactly,
happens?
exactly. Yeah. So I feel like I try my best to not say that to people. If they're struggling with something, just meeting them where they're at rather than saying, well, just wait till, the 6 month sleep regression. Like it's just not even worth it. Not even worth it to share that. Because they already know because it's all over social media.
Exactly. And if they don't know,
Yeah.
they will
Yeah.
certainly see it or they won't. Like, my son didn't do those things
Oh.
until he was like 3. Like, he had a 3-year-old sleep regression. I'm like, whoa, friend. Like, what do you do? We do sleep here. In our home, we sleep. So, and so I about these things that didn't happen, just like you were saying. And it's that, like, it's kind of reminds me of like, I struggled, so
Mhm.
you need to struggle. Like that kind of that of like, well, I've been there and that was hard, but this part was harder. And like and also I'm sure that person saying those things didn't get the support they needed at that time
Right.
either.
Right.
Like how can we change that mindset of like, I struggled with that, so I don't want anyone that I love to struggle with it
Right.
too.
Right. Yeah, and I kind of think the same thing around labor and birth, that the many people who share their not great stories, when you're just talking about how you're pregnant and they just want to share their traumatic birth stories. I think that's the same kind of line, right? Of they were lacking in that support in that moment, and then kind of just that fear that creates again, around birth. I think that's just another a piece of it.
It totally is. Ivy, I had 2 camps while I was pregnant. I'm wondering if you had similar, but like the first camp was like, let me tell you all the horrifying things that happened to me so that you're prepared for if they happen to you. And then there was this camp of like, I'm not telling you anything because I don't want to scare you. And if it happens, it'll be cool and we could talk about it after you give birth. Like, I think
Right.
one of the people who did that to me is on this live right now. Hi, Jenny. And they didn't want to tell me any bad stories, which like in some sense fair, because they didn't want to scare me. But then I also think back to the epidural thing, like, but I
Mhm.
didn't know. I didn't know the thing, because the people who actually give like really great support want, like, they probably heard horror stories and that really scarred their experience. So they went all the way to the other end of like, I'm not saying anything, which I don't know, which is probably not saying anything is better. But then hearing their stories after, I was like, well, I can be there for you too. Like, I'm not so fragile in this like pregnancy place where I can't also like hear your journey, and
Mhm.
feel like camaraderie in that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I feel like I mostly had people either sharing like okay stories or no stories. Like I remember one friend in particular who gave birth a couple months before me was like, well, like it was mostly good, but I'm not going to tell you about the bad things. I don't want to scare you. Um, and so that was okay. That was okay with me in that moment because in that moment, like I like had been working with my doula, like I had all my affirmations ready. Like we've been working on like hip squeezes. My husband like working on those to like comfort measures, like all the things. Um, and so I feel like I tried my best to like block out like anything negative. And like I followed like positive birth story, like social media accounts. So I tried to like infuse myself with all the positive stuff. So that's why I probably can't remember too many negative stories that I heard because I feel like I was just like, nope, not gonna listen to it. Like,
Your mindset was way more prepared than me. I did the, I'm not going to think about it. And if my body's made to do
yeah,
it, it's going to be able to
yeah,
do it. And everything's cool. Like, that was my whole prep.
yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah, well, I mean,
realistic.
the opposite, viewpoint would be to go off what you see on, in the movies, which is like excruciating pain, which like obviously labor isn't like a walk in the park, but the way that they show it, it just
Mm-hmm.
absolutely not correct. And that's another just
Right.
fear tactic for, well, not a fear tactic, but a way that just induces fear into people around what it's going to look like. And I think that fear only causes more stress, more anxiety, and then probably not the birth you were hoping for because you are so stressed and so anxious around the experience. Yeah.
Totally. 100%. Um, I think something really special that you and I both
Hmm.
share is our support systems. And I wondered if you wanted to share kind of like, in the
Hmm.
absence of your mom, like you do have a beautiful support system. And I wondered if you'd like to share about
Yeah.
how you work through
So
that.
I am really lucky. I have my dad who's actually here watching Charlotte right now. And he's been awesome and has definitely done his best to kind of step in as grandpa and Grammy and just being present and available. And so that's been really great. My mom's sister is not local to me, but she has definitely stepped in for me as kind of like that mother figure where I can ask her a lot of those questions. She has two kids herself. And so that's been really helpful for me just to have that listening ear and someone who does meet me where I'm at and doesn't judge me. And, even though I'm an adult, I still feel like a child. So it's nice to talk to an adult who, who I feel like has experiences that can help me. And then of course my husband has been wonderful with my daughter and supporting me and just reminding me that I'm a good mom despite all the things that often tell me in my mind that I'm not. So that's been really helpful as well. And having that supportive partner, I think, has been so impactful and just making me feel like I'm not alone in this journey. So that's been really great as well. So yeah, and I have really awesome friends, many friends who have just also had babies around the same age. And so that's been huge for me to have friends that I can just talk to. And in the beginning, we'd text each other like, oh, it was a like rough night. Like she was up 5 times. And then my friend would say, same here, we're going through this regression or we're doing that. And it was just really refreshing to just have someone to just kind of vent to that got it and didn't feel like I was complaining or being dramatic. Like they just understood because they were also living it. So that support has been huge to have those friends who just are in it with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's such a true wraparound. It's like I always think about, relationships that I've had with people throughout my life and like different points in time when we were going through a
Hmm.
shared experience together. You to think about high school, college,
Yeah.
new job, every job, all of those things. And that those
Hmm.
relationships, they do come and go, with what's the thing that rises to the surface for you as far as like, what are you going through and how can we partner together? And I think there's some relationships that maintain
Hmm.
throughout every life experience, but some are especially rich when you are
Hmm.
having a similar experience to them through pregnancy and parenthood. And, I definitely see that in my life as well. I actually got pregnant at the same time as one of my very good friends. And so we were able to build our babies together. And she gave birth about 3 weeks before me. And so we really journeyed together and She was a second time parent. I was the first time. And so she like helped me feel companioned because she wasn't freaked out. She was like, here's what we're gonna do. And she always had a plan. And so having like a friend that was currently, you know, birthing. And then I had, you know, a very good friend. She's one of the friends that has maintained through most of my life, but you know, she's a mother, she's a stay-at-home mom. She's had 2 children. And when I was struggling with feeding my son, you know, she just waited. And when I was like, I'm formula feeding, she's like, I've got a machine that I'm going to bring to your house. And I've got all these meals because, you know, she was waiting for me to get there on my own and really like comes alongside me on this journey. And, you know, now all the sons are very best friends and it's amazing. And you have this little pod of friendships that are so rich in this time. And I feel incredibly blessed with my support system. You know, I do not have a relationship with my parents in the typical sense. And so I married strategically into a family that is, they were born to be parents. Like they are the most supportive humans I've ever met. So my mother and my father-in-law have watched my son while I work since he was 6 months old. And it's something like the biggest blessing because I know that he's with people that love him at all times. Like, I think that's so special. Like, we thought about it. He's never been left with anyone that doesn't love him. And wow. You know, and his favorite, he only knows like 10 people, right? And they are people that love him so deeply. My sister and her husband are his favorite people to spend time with. And he, you know, he's being surrounded by so much love and focus on like him and his needs in a way that I couldn't be all the time for him. You know, I need to not be a mom every moment of every day. And I think that's a space where like mom guilt could creep in, you know, and to be able to say like, I need some time for myself, and who wants to be blessed with some time with my child, you know, that's a hard hill.
Truly is. But I think you hit the nail on the head, right? It's like, it's hard. It's impossible to be on 24/7 because you have your own needs that, you know, to keep you mentally stable, you have your own needs that need to be fulfilled. And before you were a mom, you were a person with hobbies and desires and things that kept you going. And I think it's so easy for us to believe, you know, I'm now a mom and that is my everything because it's all I'm really thinking about in addition to all the other things. And so it's so easy to also feel that mom guilt if you feel like, okay, well, I'm not, you know, being able to pour in every second to this human that I love so much, but I need a break. And knowing that it's okay to take that break, and that when you take that break, you're allowing yourself to come back more refreshed and to be the mom that you are striving to be. But when you aren't doing that and you just kind of continue to push through and you don't ask for that help in your support system or outside of your support system in terms of like a babysitter or something like that, when you're not asking for that help, it does become overwhelming that you're forgetting about yourself and forgetting about the core of who you are and what you need. And I remember saying this, I think my friend is still on here, that I'm seeing tonight for a mom break. I'm going without my daughter to dinner with this friend. Is she still on here? But I remember one time calling her and saying that, you know, I was just feeling badly about everything that was going on with my daughter, but I still loved her. And she reminded me, she's like, of course you love her, but that doesn't take away your need for, you know, adult conversations and love and self-care and companionship. And that just was a good reminder for me. It's like, I can still love this human, this baby, and need for myself. And I think that's just a good reminder for everybody. It's like just making sure to take that space to pour into yourself and what you need.
100%. And, you know, I think what's so important to remember is like, you can say that and I can say that, and we all personally have to make that decision inside of ourselves to get comfortable, you know, because like every person's journey, like you're gonna feel what you're gonna feel, and all we do is like in the moments to support each other, to to give parents like what they need in the moment that they need it, you know, and not force them to the conclusion before they're ready to get there, you know. I knew I'm trying to think of the first time I left my child. It was a while. And if somebody beforehand, like, Kaylee, you need to get out. I'm going to go. I'm going to take him. And I would have just probably had a really emotional moment because it wouldn't have felt good. You know, it would have, because I really struggle to ask for help because I think it implies that I can't do it. And I never ever want someone to feel like I'm not a good mom because I need help. And that's toxic. Like, that is toxic. And it's almost like, if you can't ask for help, how are you taking care of yourself when you should be asking for, you know, it's hard paradigm of like, when you ask for help and you feel bad, or you don't ask for help, but you know you should be asking for help because you're like about to snap. It's so wild. I think that's the mom guilt. That's that like connection that's unmatched with the baby that you birthed, to be separated from them, and what that feels and what that provokes in you is so complicated, and it's different for everybody.
I think you bring up such a beautiful point about being ready to take that step to leave your child and not being forced to do it. And I think it's great to be suggested by somebody like, oh, it'd be great if you could, you know, go out and maybe take a walk. But the forcing, I think, is different, because then you might go out to the store, you might go out and do something that maybe, you know, get a pedicure or something, but then you might be sobbing the entire time because you were forced to do it. And then that's not really a self-care break for you. So I feel like for someone who might be struggling with leaving, but still wants to have a break, I think even just providing space, like during a nap, if your baby is napping independently, to, instead of cleaning the house, like I know it's the sleep when the baby sleeps is like not realistic, but like that one day, right, just to like maybe just scroll through TikTok, right, mindlessly, so you don't have to think about, okay, I need to entertain my baby right now, or, you know, making sure I'm singing the ABCs and doing all the sounds for each letter that I like obsess over, like, you need to know all these. So, but just like allowing yourself in the spaces that you have to take a break. Like for me, as I mentioned, like exercise is big for me and my self-care. So like ever since my baby has been a newborn, well, once I was approved to start working out, she's been in the workout space in my house with me. So she was at first just laying there watching me, and now it's just like kind of part of our routine where she's about moving around, but in that space that, you know, she kind of knows that that's that's her independent play, but we're hanging out together. But that's my self-care that I've kind of built into my day, still being a mom. So if you're not yet ready to leave and have someone watch your child and go do something for yourself, trying to find the spaces, whether it's during a nap time or during doing something that you can do together that feels kind of more independent play for them, but you're also still like pouring into yourself.
Yeah. 100%. It's whatever works for you, you know, and really putting, not, I mean, I think it's hard to say to a parent, like, put yourself first, but put yourself on the list, you know, like that's what I always say, like, put yourself on the list at least, that you're like, you know, a checklist item, and not completely forgetting like yourself and your needs. And when you said like sleep when the baby sleeps, so funny. I was watching a TikTok because, you know, why not? And it's like, no, I totally understand sleep when the baby sleeps, but like, when does the baby do laundry?
I wish. I really wish.
You know, my son just recently started like really wanting to help with chores and stuff, which I'm like, cool, and let's like really promote that. But then I'm also like, you're kind of in my way.
I was gonna say, like, how helpful is he?
Can you go some? You know, I think helpful is in the eye of the beholder. So, you know, he does a good job. And I love his desire to be helpful. He'll say, is there something I can help you with? He learned that from his grandma, not from
That is
me.
so sweet. Oh my gosh, I love that.
You know, I think, you know, I want to really thank you for this time today. My hope so deeply is that our conversation just help companion some mamas or parents in general through whatever time they're having, whether it's a bad day or a good day, to just know that like you are not alone. and we are all here,
Right.
like, surviving parenthood and soaking up the good moments
Yeah.
and being patient with the
Yeah.
bad or the hard. And I wondered if you had any like words of encouragement in general for
Yeah.
anyone who watches
I
this.
would say that it's definitely a journey. It definitely has its full share of ups and downs. And I think just important to know that there are resources to exist. There, oh my God, I can't talk. There are resources that exist. And knowing that you can reach out for help, and knowing that it's not something to be ashamed of if you're having a hard time mentally during pregnancy, during postpartum, or at any point with your baby or child, and knowing that we truly are in this together, is that everyone's going to have different ups and downs, different experiences, but they are all very valid, and that if you are struggling, that you can reach out to a friend or someone in your support system or professional help. But just knowing that you're not alone, I think that's just the biggest thing. And knowing that although people are going to tell you left and right to enjoy it all and to soak it all up, it's okay to be sitting there with your baby as they're crying and you're crying as well, and knowing that we all have those moments. But that as you just continue to take space for yourself and to reach out and ask for the help that you need, that you can just feel a little bit more grounded through it all. Knowing that, we can hope that things will get better, or we'll still have those challenges, right? But just feeling grounded through it all, and just knowing that it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling, and that you're not a bad mom. You're really a great mom or a great parent, because you care so much to be feeling all these feelings. I think that speaks volumes.
I'm gonna internalize all those things too. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here today and just being so open. And I love your outlook. I love your energy, and can't I can imagine that your daughter just soaks in all of that every day.
Thank
And
you.
I think
I
that's amazing.
appreciate it. I was listening to you. I'm like, you have an incredible just sounding voice. I'm like, I'm sure your son just like, oh, I just want to sit in your lap and listen to you talk all day, mom. So I'm just soothing. Yeah.
He does like things, which is sometimes good and sometimes bad. Um, well, thank you. So this closes out our very first I Thought It Was Just Me series. Next month, I would just encourage everybody to tune in. We're going to be talking to Shannon Kopp, one of our Say It Brave members, about mental health and pet therapy. I myself have a precious little therapy pug that has changed my life. And so I just invite you all to be there. And we will announce those dates in the next few weeks. So thank you all for coming and being here, and
Thanks,
we'll see you
Kaylee.
soon.
Bye.